Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we get to sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players and related music industry experts. If you love playing guitar, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey, this is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar, and if you're a guitar player who's looking to make some more money, then listen very closely to what I'm about to tell you. If you're a guitar player, or any other kind of musician for that matter, or if you know a musician who wants to make some more money without having to tour or go on the road, or put up with any of the other BS musicians normally have to deal with, then you need to download this new special report about how to make a small fortune by licensing your music. And by licensing music, I mean getting your music inserted into movies, television shows, and commercials. The report is less than 20 pages long, and it was written by Mike Elsner, who I interviewed in episode number 167 of this show. Mike's been doing this for over 14 years, and he's had over 2,000 songs licensed at this point in time. That means he's getting paid to license almost 150 songs per year. Now, keep in mind, most successful career musicians don't get paid for 150 songs in total over a 30 or 40-year career. Yet, Mike's getting paid for this on an annual basis. And the cool thing about this business is that you can run it from your own home studio, and you'll never have to deal with ivory tower record label executives telling you what to play and how to play it, and no shady managers or unethical business people telling you what to do either. So download Mike's free ebook on the 4-step plan to licensing success right now. Just go to everyonelovesguitar.com/Mike. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. Let me know how you like the book. And now let's get on with the show. Hey, everybody. This is Craig Garber from Everyone Loves Guitar. I have a really special guest today. We're with Cindy Cashdollar. She's a very unique, amazing dobro non-pedal steel guitar player, one of the best in the country. She's played with Ryan Adams, Bob Dylan. Here, just check out these names. I can't even, Ryan Adams, Bob Dylan, Van Morrison, and Rod Stewart. We're done. Albert Lee, Asleep at the Wheel, Jorma Kaukonen, Leon Redbone, Marcia Ball, Daniel Lanois, Red Volkaert, and Peter Rowan. She's incredibly diverse, both with respect to her ability to play in so many different musical genres and in her ability to step out in solo or fill in the background as required by the song. She grew up in Woodstock, honing her chops playing with, again, check this out, bluegrass legend John Harold and Paul Butterfield, Levon, Helm, and Rick Danko of the band. And we're going to get to the bottom of these stories of how this all happened. But she also earned 5 Grammy Awards while playing for 8 years and 7 albums with the country band Asleep at the Wheel. She toured with Van Morrison and appeared with him on Austin City Limits. She's also worked with Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard, and her debut CD, Slideshow, featured the following guests: Sonny Landreth, Jorma Kaukonen, Red Volkaert, who I interviewed in episode 159. If you haven't heard that, check it out. He's a lovely, wonderful guy. Herb Remington, and a monster player. Herb Remington, Marcia Ball, Mike Aldridge, Steve James, and many others. In 2011, Cindy was the first female to be inducted into the Texas Steel Guitar Hall of Fame and the Texas Music Hall of Fame in 2012. She's also produced 4 instructional DVDs, which you can find on her website at cindycashdollar.com. And yes, CASHDOLLAR. Her new CD, which will be released later this year, has the following guests on the album: Albert Lee, Sonny Landreth, Rory Block, Omar Kent Dykes from Omar and the Howlers, Louisiana, Texas piano great Marcia Ball, who we mentioned earlier, Larry Campbell on fiddle and mandolin, formerly with Bob Dylan, and he was also Levon Helm's band leader and part of the Midnight Ramble shows for many years. That's the shows that Levon held in his barn, was every Friday night or every Saturday night?
Every Saturday.
Every Saturday night. She's also, Amy Helm, that's Levon's daughter, is also guesting, making an appearance on her upcoming album, and Ray Benson from Asleep at the Wheel. We'll talk about this upcoming release with other cool stuff Cindy's been involved with recently. And yes, for those of you wondering, let's get the elephant. What is it? How to get the elephant? Out of the room. Yeah, the elephant in the room. Her real last name is Cashdollar, and that's just like you said. I think it's an old family name from up in that area.
Yes, my dad's side of the family goes back many years here in Woodstock, New York.
Very cool. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. I think this is great. I listened to some of the podcasts, and you have such a great variety, a very interesting array of guests. So I'm happy to be amongst the gang.
Well, I'm happy you're here. You're very cool. I enjoyed talking to you when we set you up. I want to talk about some of the cool stuff you've done recently, and then we can go back to the beginning, if that works for you.
Yeah, and backwards. That's good. I read books backwards.
By the end of the call, we'll both be backwards, I'm sure. Don't worry.
Rewind. It's all good.
Your last album came out, it's Slideshow, came out in 2004, and your new album will be out later this year. What prompted you? I mean, it's a long span. What prompted you to put a new record together? What was the trigger?
Well, a lot of people would come up to me after the shows and say, when are you going to put a new CD out? I have this one already, because Slideshow, the only one I have, so that would be the only one sitting on the merchandise table. So, but aside from people's requests, I just thought that it would be nice to after all these years, do another CD, just have fun working with a lot of different people. I really enjoy doing that. As you mentioned, this Slideshow had so many guests, and this is the same. I really, I've been a side person for my entire career, and that's what I enjoy doing. And I enjoy collaborating with people, and I just love getting to work. Some of the people on the CD I had not worked with before. Some I have worked with, obviously, before. And it's just fun to toss ideas around. When you're on the, sometimes when you're hired to be a side person, you don't always get to do that. You just get out there and do the show. But if you're recording and you have the time to do it, it's nice to be able to sit there and bounce ideas back and forth.
That's cool. I'm happy for you. I'm looking forward to hearing it. Question for you, 14 years, a long time. So I was curious, where are you at now in your life that was different from then, and how do you feel that's reflected in the music, either the playing or the lyrics or the compositions?
Well, it is a long time.
Well, think about how, I'm like 14 years ago, I was just like a totally different human being.
Well, I think, anything evolves over the years, and in my particular case, hopefully my playing evolved. Certainly more experience playing. With every year we all experience, different things, and so, I'm glad to do this CD. I think that there's more ideas, there's more stuff there to put out there.
But how is, do you have a different headset when you're making this CD versus the last one?
No, I think what was similar was, first of all, finding material. That was always the fun part to me, was find the material and then match it up with the guest artist.
Yeah, that is cool.
Yeah, so that's always fun, because I always start out with a list in my head of songs and then go, okay, so who would be good for this? Or in some cases, I would say to people, is there anything you have not recorded yet, or that you're working on that you would like to do now? Maybe you haven't had a chance to record it, or it didn't go on your last CD, but so it's kind of like potluck dinner. Everybody brings a little something different,
That's really cool. So are there any original compositions on here, or most of this covers or co-writes?
Yes, there's 2 original compositions on here.
Awesome. Are you doing those alone, or do you do those? Right?
No, every track on the CD, as on the last one, is with a band of some sort, not the same band. There's a couple of tracks that have the same backup players, but most every track is a different group. Or, there's a couple of duets. I have vocalists too, because I do not sing. So there'll be 3 vocal tracks on there. And yeah, there's not, I don't think there is one piece on there that's just like a solo piece.
That's awesome. Do you actually record in the studio with most of these people, or is it like tracks sent in?
Yes, at the studio. I know that so many people, said, well, why don't you just send tracks? Not the artists that I asked, but
Sure.
but other people, engineers and stuff. And because I recorded this, I went out to Los Angeles to record a couple of tracks with Albert Lee. One of them we recorded actually while we were on tour at a studio that happened to be next to a club we were playing. With Sonny Landreth, I went to Louisiana, so, it would be easy to send the tracks out, but I don't particularly like to work that way. I like things to feel very live and be with the people in the room. I think it's much more fun, much more spontaneous that way.
I'll tell you what, that's a lot of, effort on your end too, to go to all these places. It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. It's, that's why when people are saying, well, why are you going here? Why are you going there? But that's why I think it's worth getting that feeling, that interaction.
The camaraderie of the being together in the room and working off each other.
Yeah.
It's
nice. And I think also that, if you are sitting next to a person and you're playing, you are just feeding off of each other. You're having a conversation in person instead of on Skype.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. And it's weird because I listen to some bands, some like newer, like I listen to a lot of stoner rock. I'm not a stoner, but I like stoner rock. It's like basically psychedelic. It's like, listening to Jorma. We just talked about Jorma. It's his guitar, except it's 2018 and not, it's psychedelic stuff. And a lot of these bands, I'll do research on them, and they are mailing all their tracks in, and it really is bewildering how they can. Some of the music's really good. I don't know how they can come up with that, doing it like that. It's really mind blowing, because I would think like you want to be near that person to get that special thing that you can't get otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, right now in the world that we're living in, the technical world, it is so easy and to send tracks, and I do it a lot myself. People will send me tracks, and I do a lot of overdub work that way. I don't have my own home studio. I have a studio in my area that I work at, but it's really certainly is easier, and you can get a great result. I think it's just a matter of personal preference and also time.
Yeah,
it's hard. I mean, it takes me, it took me a few years to do the last CD, and it's taking a long time to do this CD for the obvious reasons.
Yeah.
So.
No, but it sounds like it's going to be really well worth it. You got some great guests on there, and you
it's been so much fun. It's been really, really a blast.
Awesome. How did you wind up meeting? Inquiring minds want to know. How did you wind up meeting Paul Butterfield, Levon Helm, and Rick Danko? And what's the backstory? How you wound up like hanging out and playing with these guys?
Well, I as you mentioned, grew up in Woodstock, New York, and they all lived here. And it's so unfortunate that these three amazing people that we're speaking of are no longer with us.
Oh, yeah.
But, I'm trying to remember where I met Paul, and I can't. I know very early on, I did I recorded 2 songs with him, and I can't remember if it was like his album that never got finished, but somewhere in the midst of Woodstock, which is a very tiny little town, I met Paul and ended up doing gigs with him. And Levon Helm and Rick Danko, I was invited to a New Year's Eve party at Levon's home, and someone said, "Oh, bring your dobro," which I did. And my husband at the time, Frank Campbell, brought his bass. And see, we just had a great time jamming with Levon and Rick, and then they called just like a few weeks later. They were doing an acoustic show in New York City, and would we come the next day and the next night and play with them?
That's so cool.
That started.
That's really, when you play with these guys, look, you're a professional at a high level and you've been doing this a long time, and you're probably used to meeting all kinds. I mean, look at your roster. But when you first sit down and play with somebody that you might have even listened to growing up, is it weird?
No, actually, that was the great thing, is that before meeting Levon and Rick and Paul, I was listening to them. You know, I was a huge fan of the band. And so it almost feels familiar to me. It was like, you know, Levon had a very unfortunate accident. I mean, he was practicing for a movie part because, as a lot of people know, he, in addition to being an incredible musician, he also was had an acting career. So unfortunately, why he was practicing with a loaded gun, who knows, but he was, and he accidentally shot himself in the leg, and so he was out of commission drumming for a year. So he and Rick had this incredible acoustic quartet for a while. And then when Levon got better, it became Levon, Helm, and the Woodstock All-Stars. But it was the band's music, first done unplugged and then eventually electric. And it was a fun side project for them, but for me, it was all, I knew the songs. Yeah. I had never sat down and played them, but I knew them. It was the same with working with Van Morrison. I mean, I was always a huge fan, so it was so great to be able to actually play that music, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. What a voice he had, Levon. It was so powerful. You know, just like really, very meaningful, very powerful, very unique and deliberate, just a great player.
Yeah, I think his drumming and his vocal style was such a force. I mean, there was no one else that ever sounded like him, sounds like, or will. I mean, he was one of a kind.
Even his last album, when he came back after surviving cancer, his voice was still like Levon Helm. It was just awesome. I still listen to it, man. It's great.
If 4 bars of music or less, you can tell who it is.
Absolutely. Hey, how'd you initially meet Red
Volkaert?
Our friend in common, yeah.
I lived in Austin, Texas for 23 years. So early on, I met Red. Can't remember where. But it's, Austin was a lot like Woodstock. Lot of musicians. So just as I felt very fortunate growing up here and seeing so much live music and being around so much music at a young age. When I moved to Austin in 1992, it was kind of felt like home. There were so many artists everywhere. So I met Red, probably at a gig somewhere.
Yeah. What a lovely
amazing guy. He's another one of a kind person. He's a genius guitar player.
I agree with all the above. And just the sweetest guy. What's that?
Funny as hell.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So funny.
He's wonderful. He's just a great person. What prompted you to move to Austin, and how did you get hooked up with Asleep at the Wheel?
I had been touring, recording with Leon Redbone for 5 years prior to that. And, at the time, his touring was kind of getting slower. Because he was doing a lot of voiceovers for TV commercials and stuff. So his touring schedule was getting slimmer. The club work around Woodstock was getting slimmer. A lot of places were closing down. So I just figured that and also by the time that you heard of someone that might be looking for a steel player or a dobro player, it was long gone, by the time it reached this little town here in the Catskills. So moving to Nashville was a way to just kind of start over, be closer to the source, maybe, be right there if anybody was looking for somebody, then you would hear about it firsthand. Okay. So that's why.
You said Nashville?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I detoured. First I moved to Nashville. Then I moved to Woodstock.
How long were you in Nashville?
Only 6 months.
Oh, so what happened or didn't happen there that made you go to Austin?
Well, my husband was out one night and met someone and they started talking, and it was Pete Finney, who's a wonderful steel guitar player that lives in Nashville. So Pete said, your wife plays steel and dobro. Well, I think Asleep at the Wheel is looking for a new steel player, and they're coming here to Nashville tomorrow to tape a TV show.
Holy crap. Talk about serendipity.
So,
how nutty is that?
It was crazy. So, of course, I didn't know anybody in Asleep at the Wheel, but I was a fan of their music. I loved Western swing music. So, so the next day, I knew what TV studio they were going to be pulling up to. So my husband and I waited in the parking lot. We could see the cones where the parking spot for their tour bus was coned off. And I had my little promotional pack. Before we had moved, I had made a little demo CD, and had a little bio in there and everything.
Good.
So when the bus pulled up, I just knocked on the door and said, "Can I please speak to your steel player?" And so he got off the bus. His name was John Ely, great player. And I said, "Is it true that you're leaving?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "Well, can you please pass my promotional stuff on to Ray Benson?" So that's how that happened.
And he did.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap.
And Ray Benson called like a day or two later, and I was gone in Europe. But eventually we hooked up after, Ray and I talked on the phone. Ray Benson, the leader of Asleep at the Wheel. We talked for, back and forth for a while, and I finally went to Austin and auditioned. And so that's how I moved to Austin in 1992, because Asleep at the Wheel is based out of there, and they tour a lot. So I had to move to Austin.
That's a great story. I can't believe all the. What's that?
Nuts.
Yeah, I mean, all those little Mike. I always this is what I like about hearing people's stories. It's always an amazing thing of the most unlikely series of events. If your husband had turned left and talked to the person on the left side instead of turning right and talking to Pete Finney. I mean, that's so, wow. That's really, that's why I sometimes, there's a greater force, sort of, sponsoring, all the, I saw your little kitty. He was trying to get out there.
Sorry, I had to let the child out. Okay.
No, it's all good. It's always just amazing when when it's almost like when you are meant to do something, the universe is going to make sure it happens, even if it has to take 0% chances of things happening and lining them up all at the same time.
It's true. It's amazing how. Well, I think, a lot of people, no matter what profession you are in, it's always amazing to hear how people got their jobs, and certainly in this business, I think like any business, it's crazy circumstances, luck, right place at the right time, and word of mouth, I think.
Yeah. All the above. Really, really good story. Thanks for sharing it. That was very cool.
You're welcome.
You were with Asleep at the Wheel for 8 years, and I was curious what the most valuable part of that experience was for you, and maybe if you could, was there a particular fun memory? I'm sure there's loads of them, but that comes.
There's 8 years of a
something that comes to mind that you might be able to share.
Oh boy. It's funny. It's like a blur. It's like, that's a lot of time. But I think in the beginning, working with the Sleepy Through Wheel, the interesting thing was getting to know Western swing music more, which really is a very interesting melting pot of music. It's blues, it's jazz, it's hillbilly, it's country, it's a little bit of everything. And even though I was a fan of it, I had never really played it that much, and so the learning process was invaluable. It was to me, getting to work again with another horn player or horn players. When I worked with Leon Redbone, he had 2 horn players, so it was great to again get the chance to work with horn players, and also the people that I met working with Ray Benson and Asleep at the Wheel. Ray at the time when I was with them, 2 of the CDs that I had recorded were the tribute to Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys. So not only did I get to meet some of the original members of Bob Wills's band, which was very thrilling for me to meet Eldon Shamlin, one of the most incredible guitar players of our time. I think he was in Rolling Stone magazine's top 100 guitar players. And Johnny Gimbel, a famous fiddle player, and Herb Remington, and the steel players. So getting to meet those men that had toured and recorded with Bob Wills, and that was another different era of the business. So it was very interesting to hear their stories and to get to play with them. And also to meet and play with all the artists that Ray had hired, Willie Nelson and Merle Haggard and Dolly Parton and Lyle Lovett, and all these people were wonderful, artists to get to play with. And the traveling too, I saw a lot of great things, and going to Japan and seeing Ray 6'7" was pretty.
Is that your favorite place that you've been to, Japan?
One of them, I would say.
What's a favorite place off the top of your head, if there is one?
I think the south of France was probably one of the most beautiful places. Hawaii was beautiful.
Yeah, Hawaii is cool. I actually got married in Hawaii.
Well, I don't blame you. A gorgeous place. So that was the highlights, I think, was just, over the years with Asleep at the Wheel was not only the music, it was the people involved in that music. And, Herb Remington is still with us. He's 89, 90 years old. He lives in Houston. I talk to him often. And these people are invaluable for their knowledge and their history. And so I feel very fortunate to have had that gift along with working with Asleep at the Wheel all those years.
I would imagine you really got extremely sharp on that kind of music is so involved with steel. You probably had to be on your game all the time.
Constantly. And thank you, John Ely, for, John Ely, who I mentioned earlier, who was the steel player for Sleep at the Wheel for 6 years. After he left the group, he remained in Austin, so I took lessons from him. I would travel to Houston to take lessons with Herb Remington. I would travel to Dallas to take lessons from Maurice Anderson, who was another steel player that had been with Bob Wills in later years. So for me, it was constant learning process and constant work, but that is always good, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you got to learn from those guys, those are pretty good teachers
in the world.
Yeah. Congratulations, first of all. I know it was a while ago, but on being inducted into the Texas Steel Guitar Hall of Fame and the Music Hall of Fame. I was curious. You're welcome. That's a pretty prestigious, big deal. And I was curious, did you get more exposure from that help your career at all?
don't think so, quite frankly. I mean, it's a nice thing to have. You know, it was certainly, you know, I was honored for each one of those things. But no, I don't think that it upped profile or you know, did anything career-wise. I think it was just a nice recognition.
Okay. I was for each one of these artists, I'm going to just throw 3 names out there. If you can.
But I would like to back up and just say one thing about being the first woman to be inducted into the Texas Steel Guitar Hall of Fame. That felt good just because of knowing, you know, a couple of women that, you know, had played in the 50s and the 60s. Marion Hall comes to mind. I encourage a lot of whoever's listening and is into, you know, steel guitar to check out Marion Hall. She was a great player and, you know, she worked really hard back in the 50s. It was very difficult, I think, for women back then. So to be the first woman inducted was, like, to me, honoring those women. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I do. That's really cool. You're very easy to get along with. I could see, like, I know that women have been discriminated against in many areas, and I've met a lot of female musicians that have shared some stuff with me. And, you know, I'm glad you got your just desserts, you know.
Well, thanks.
For each one of these artists, can you talk about how you got the gig and the nature of the engagement and maybe a cool story or interesting story about working with them? Bob Dylan.
Bob, you know, I worked with Bob on the Time Out of Mind CD, and that was a phone call, and I was very surprised, as any, you know, Bob Dylan's management, and you know, Bob's doing a record, and you know, we're calling a lot of people, and you're on the list. So that's how I got. I think Bob had heard me on a recording or maybe seen me on a TV appearance, and I can't remember which or any of the details. But so that's how I came to play on that CD.
How cool is that?
It was nice. I mean, everybody automatically, not everybody, but a lot of people assume that I knew Bob because he lived in Woodstock for some time.
That was years ago, though, wasn't it?
And I did not cross paths with him at that time. So it was so funny. Years later, finally met him. So it was great. That was a very great recording to be a part of. It was all done live. Daniel Lanois produced it. There was a lot of really fun, great people to work with on that recording. So it was a very interesting and fun project.
Any cool stories?
I don't think I have any stories. It was pretty much just, you know, go to the studio and get to work. So it's just, no, not really. I don't.
We need a Bob Dylan story.
It's so boring about that.
All right.
It was, you know, I mean, you know, it was very interesting to be, you know, I had certainly done live recordings before, but that was a lot of people at one time to be in a studio with, and Bob, you know, never missed anything anyone was doing in his headphones. He heard everything that was going on. He's a very brilliant man. And it was nice to meet new people, and also there were a couple people there that I knew. So I'm sorry, I have no
what you just said is pretty cool, because you think about it. I can't imagine between Bob Dylan and Daniel Lanois, that's a lot of brain production.
There's a story right there.
Yeah, that's a lot of brain production power there, you know. I mean, that's pretty cool. And where was that recorded? Was that recorded up in Woodstock?
No, that Time Out of Mind was recorded in a few places, but the portion that I worked on was done at Criteria Studio in Miami.
Okay. Jorma, how did you wind up working with him, and any cool stories?
Jorma, I forgot how he contacted me, and I think Jorma also lived in Woodstock. It seems like everybody we're talking about had lived here at one time or another. But Jorma had lived here. I didn't meet him at that time either, but I think I first met him maybe at a gig that he was at as also part of the audience. And then I taught at his he has a wonderful workshop place in Pomeroy, Ohio, called Fur Peace Ranch. FURPEACE Ranch. And so I started teaching dobro there. And then when his CD Blue Country Heart came out, I went on the road with he and Barry Mitterhoff, who's a great mandolin player. So I toured with Jorma and had also done some hot tuna shows with he and Jack Cassidy. So he's a great man, lovely person. Another one. I just love working with people that have a sense of humor, and he does as well. And he also has a great collection of steel guitars.
Ah, so that was cool.
Actually, I was taught steel guitar up at Fur Peace one year, and he was a student. So there he was, sitting in the front row of the workshop, taking notes like everybody else, and did great.
That's awesome. Yeah, I saw him down here with Barry Mitterhoff and Jack. They were playing like kind of an acoustic-ish hot tuna for a while there. It was really cool. They played down here.
His guitar playing is beautiful. I mean, you're on stage with him, and whether you're on stage or in the audience, it just takes you somewhere else. I just saw his solo show last weekend, and it was just gorgeous. He's just such a unique person.
Well, he's one of these guys that's rare in that he could wail on an electric and rip, finger pick on an. I mean, that's a very unusual talent to be. It's hard to be an expert at such a high level in one thing. To be an expert in such a high level at multiple things is like, exponentially more difficult. And he has done it like you with the multiple instruments. It's very unusual.
Yeah, he does it all. I was surprised he only had 2 guitars on stage.
Wow, I can imagine his guitar collection.
Yeah, it's really incredible. He's very into instruments, and it's really fun to talk to him about guitars and steel guitars.
Cool. Van Morrison.
Van Morrison had seen me with Asleep at the Wheel. And at that time, let me see, I worked with Van in 2006. So I had been gone from Asleep at the Wheel for quite a while. I worked with them from 1992 until 2001, I think. So, I left just because I was getting a little burned out playing Western swing and wanted to go back to doing more of a variety of music. So I left on good terms, and Van Morrison called Asleep at the Wheel office looking for me. He was looking for a steel player for a tour, and so he spoke with Ray Benson, and Ray gave him my phone number, and so Van Morrison's management called me, and that's how I got that.
This is very ordinary, like very, they saw you playing and they just came, just called you for most of these situations. I
mean, that was another moment where you go, oh wow, this is great. I know this person's music, and so it was really, I would say, challenging actually to to play steel guitar. It's just something that personally I would not have thought of or associated with Van Morrison's music.
Yeah.
But he had just released a nod to country music CD called, believe it was called Pay the Devil. And so he was looking for steel to kind of, fill out, that kind of material. But I just ended up doing all the other stuff too, and ended up touring with him, and also recording for a year. And it was great. He had so many great people in his bands, and I was very impressed with him vocally. His voice had not changed, and even he still sings in the same keys, which I found very impressive after all these years.
Did you get to play any of his older songs?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, interestingly, I thought that the tour was going to be most of the country CD, but I think he would just do a few songs off of it, and the rest of it was all his other material.
Those are he's a great songwriter, really beautiful songwriter.
Yeah, beautiful stuff to play.
You grew up in Woodstock. What was your childhood like?
Well, it was, Woodstock was not always, it didn't really become known until after the famed Woodstock Festival in 1969, which wasn't even here. It was supposed to be here, and then the township realized that they couldn't handle it, so it moved to Bethel, New York, which is about 60 miles or so from here. So the early part was very quiet. I started playing regular guitar when I was 11 years old. So, it was just basically growing up in kind of a rural area, and just spending a lot of time outdoors for entertainment, hiking or riding my bike or whatever. It's a pretty ordinary childhood, I think.
How'd you get into music? Did anybody in your family musical, or?
My grandmother on my mom's side played piano, and my dad played trumpet, but it wasn't like you would hear people playing music around the house, ever. My mom had a very interesting music collection. She liked world beat, for lack of a better term, music. I don't even think that term was around then.
No, it wasn't.
She, African drum. She had African drum records. She had Japanese records. She loved jazz. So there was a Dave Brubeck and Stan Getz and Benny Goodman, and such an incredible variety. And my dad listened to country music on the radio. So there was two diverse musical things going on in the household. But I just, decided I wanted to play guitar when I was 11, and took lessons, and just, went through different periods of different styles. But it was a lovely place to grow up, and because Woodstock's in the heart of the Catskill Mountains. And so as the years went on, and after the festival came and went from Bethel, a lot of artists started coming here. Woodstock's only 2 hours north of New York City, and after the festival, all these music clubs started popping up. It just became the place to be. And so growing up, even before the Woodstock Festival, actually, I would go to these little festivals called sound outs. And I believe that might have been the first place where I saw Paul Butterfield. I might have been maybe 13, I can't remember, or 12. But, there was always live music here. I saw Van Morrison play. He lived here in Woodstock. I saw him when I was 12 years old. You
had that much of an awareness about music at that age. That's pretty... And I guess, was it the environment there, just being in Woodstock? Like it was... I grew up in the Bronx. It was, was it like, we'd break bottles for fun? Is that just what you guys did? That was a normal, part of what you did up there as a child.
Well, I think my mom obviously liked listening to records a lot. and my dad liked listening to the radio a lot. And so I think there was always music humming along in the background. But also, I think, you know, when I started playing guitar at 11, it was just, I found it fun to do and also very soothing. It was like a very relaxing thing to do. I had no dreams of becoming a guitar player. I just enjoyed it. And then when there was a big concert in town, and as I mentioned, that's where I saw Van Morrison, and also Odetta.
Oh, wow.
Folk singer, John Hammond Jr., who's an incredible blues artist. And I can't remember who else. My mom took me because my guitar teacher at the time was in the same concert. I think it was a benefit. It was a benefit show for a musician whose home had burned down. And so that concert, I think, really changed my perspective on seeing so many different artists live. And I was just, you know, mesmerized that night. You know, I had no idea. I mean, to hear Odetta at that young age, how powerful she was, you know, and to see somebody like John Hammond Jr. and Van Morrison all lumped into one, it was like this audiovisual overload at a young age.
Yeah.
I think it kind of sparked a little fire into just getting into more different kinds of music and different artists. And then, you know, as years went on, seeing a lot of different artists around town.
What kind of work did your parents do?
My dad was a milkman. My grandparents had a dairy farm here called Locust Grove Dairy, and he so there was that. So and then the dairy was sold, and so my dad went to work for a company that had big machinery that separated dairy product. And my mom was a stay-at-home mom.
So really very, very normal, happy stuff. That's like really cool. So how did you get to playing steel and dobro? And like, what did you like about them over, you know, conventional electric or acoustic guitar? Why'd you have to be different, Cindy?
Well, it was just another unplanned thing. I mean, I over the years, I had, I think, gone through, you know, first it was folk music, then it was, you know, blues, kind of finger picking. You know, Rory Block, who's a great artist. She lived in the area, and so I took guitar lessons from her. So I went, you know, through that period of blues and country finger picking. Then I got an electric guitar and was taking jazz lessons, and then just kind of got burned out on guitar. And I was waitressing in a club here in town, and saw someone playing dobro, and just a light bulb went off. I loved that sound, and I had experimented on my own with trying to learn bottleneck guitar. You know, holding a regular guitar upright with a bottleneck, you know, a slide that fits on your pinky or your index finger, and listening to an artist by the name of John Fahey, who was very guitar player, but he had one record called Of Rivers and Religion where he's playing bottleneck guitar. So I would try and teach myself from listening to that record, try and figure out his open tunings, because I had a pretty good ear. And anyway, I saw someone in a bluegrass band at this bar I was working at and playing, and I just thought, wow, I just love that. That sounds even cooler than John Fahey. You know, it sounds even more vocal and more concise. And so I went up to this guy and I said, "Do you give lessons?" And he said, "No, I'm still taking lessons, but here's my teacher's name and phone number." So that's how I got into playing dobro. And then from there I went to lap steel, and from there I went to steel guitar. So it was just like my instruments kept getting more strings and heavier to haul around. But I think it just, they're all kind of in the same family, the dobros and the lap steels and the steel guitars. I think it just depends on how you approach it and how you apply it and what you like and what sounds that you like from it.
You play like with, you mentioned the word precise. There's so much precision when you play, and it looks much harder than a regular guitar because it seems like there's more moving parts.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, to me, it's like almost any instrument can be challenging. It's like I love cello. I think a friend of mine played cello, and they tried to show me that once, and that was disastrous. And mandolin, I held once and tried to play it, and I felt like I was playing on a toothpick. I mean, it's skinny neck, like the fiddle. I mean, I think any instrument is challenging, but if you love it enough and you want to do it, you will. And I think slide guitar is very challenging because, you have no tactile connection with your fingers and the fretboard. There is a slide there.
Yeah.
It's a slide bar. So that becomes your hand and your fingers, and you do have to be precise. Otherwise, you sound horribly out of tune. And it is like a voice. So it's very vocal the way that you can sustain notes and change pitch with sliding, but you don't want to change it too much. So yeah, you have to be precise. And when people, in teaching, I think a lot of people think it does look kind of easy. It sounds easy, but it's not.
I don't, usually the things that sound and look the easiest only sound and look easy because there's been like a ton of effort put in up front to make it come out like that. Does that make sense?
Well, I think some people are just naturals, and so but I think with anything, there has to be some effort. And in the beginning, when I was starting to play dobro, which now, of course, it's called resonator guitar. Dobro was a patent name. But I was very frustrated. I found it very difficult to learn how to play with a bar, and you're sliding back and forth and finger picks and then going to a steel guitar where there's more strings. And, I just think that it's a lot of concentration, I think. You know?
Would you say, like, to be a good slide a player of any instrument, that your ears got to be really accurate, as opposed to, not that you don't have to have a good ear to play guitar, but it's going to be more of a hardship if your ear isn't that extra because of the lack of tactile? Yes,
definitely. And even playing bottleneck style where, the guitar is held upright. It's a regular round neck guitar that you can press the strings down on, and your slide bar, like I mentioned before, is not being held in the hand. It's a glass or brass or metal slide that goes over the index, the pinky or your ring finger. Even that, though, you're sliding, so you have to stop somewhere. You have to save the frets. But you can play fiddle, with any instrument, really. You have to be in tune. If you play piano, you're going to hope that when you sit down, it's been tuned for you.
Right.
But with any instrument, you have to be in tune. Really.
What are some of the biggest obstacles, Cindy, that you've had to overcome or deal with, or the bigger obstacles that you might have had to overcome or deal with, or, throughout your journey, early on or at any time, whether it's personal, music related, or business related?
Oh, let's see. I think overall, an obstacle, one of or both of, is finding balance. I think in this profession, when you're, working so hard, because it's a hard business, even though it's joyous. But I think it's a challenge to balance your personal life with your professional life, because you're gone a lot if you're on the road professionally, and even so that's one challenge. And I think the other challenge is being a side person, juggling all the different opportunities that come along. And a lot of times trying to do everything at once because you want to. It's like, wow, this sounds like a great gig. I'll take that. Oh, here's a great session. I think I'll do this. Even though I have to learn 21 songs for the gig. I think the knowing yourself and knowing how much you can take on and do a good job at, and knowing when to cut it off, and saying, honestly, I would love to do that, but I just don't have the time to put in. I think that's also for I would say probably most side people that you would interview might say that.
Yeah, that's a common thing. Do you find, like, I mean, I think it's in any profession where you're like a freelancer, where for hire, a service for hire, and because I know, like myself on marketing stuff, but when early on in my career, it's the same thing. It's like, I want to take everything. A, you need the money. B, you want the experience. And C, the gig might sound pretty good. And then you get to a point where you're saying, well, it's easier. It has been easier as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I think as we all get older, I think the important thing is, if you have intuition, is to learn to trust your intuition, musically and personally, professionally, whatever. I think you get to know yourself, and you know your limitations and you know your strengths, and you learn how to balance all of those things. So I think that's a challenge for anyone. Yeah. But that has been my two challenges, I think. I think, and also learning to, one of the things I learned so early on was just to try and be aware so much all the time, to really be on your toes, with everything, being aware of your surroundings, traveling.
Sure. Let's talk about gear for a little bit. I can't talk to you about slide because I don't know about it. I don't like talking about stuff I don't know, but I am curious. Are there any cool or interesting stories behind how you maybe acquired any of your guitars?
Well, there's a lot of guitars.
That's a good problem.
Wow. Some were gifts. My husband, Frank, who I spoke of before, who I was married to in the years during Asleep at the Wheel and Leon Redbone, he got me my first steel guitar, my double neck non-pedal steel guitar. And so he got it for me just as a hobby, because I had been playing dobro and 6-string lap steel. And so here was this instrument in which to play Western swing on and country music. And I didn't know anything about it, not the tunings, nothing. So it became this fun hobby that turned into an 8-year gig with Asleep at the Wheel,
That's really cool.
I'm trying to think of, in my mind, I'm going through all the instruments, and I've got a beautiful Weissenborn guitar. Those were Koa guitars that originally were made in the 1920s. They are, they have a hollow square neck. They have a beautiful, different sound than a resonator guitar. But I've told this story on a video before that has been aired for another project called the Music Box. But it was just an instrument I acquired. There was a couple whose son had passed, and they were selling his possessions, and it was the last of his possessions to be sold. And there were Japanese instrument collectors that wanted this particular Weissenborn and were offering this elderly couple a lot of money for it. And I found out about it. And so I called him and I said, I cannot compete with what these collectors are offering you. But if you will sell me this guitar for this amount of dollars, it's all I can afford, I promise you it will be played. And I had asked them, did you ever hear your son play music on this? And they said, no, he had lived in Hawaii and was taking lessons, but they never heard him play. And I said, well, if I have this guitar, I promise I will make you a recording of what it sounds like. And I did. They sold it to me, and I went into the studio with some friends and played some nice Hawaiian music on it and sent them the recording, and they were very grateful for that.
What a nice story.
And so, yeah, I mean,
it's really cool.
It's great how instruments come and go, and also what happens to them. I have a student who texted me a month ago and said, I'm in Montana, and the store owners are claiming that this lap steel here for sale is for yours, and it was yours, So he sent me a picture, and sure enough, it was a lap steel I had owned a long time ago, forgotten all about, had sold, and there it was in Montana.
That is wild. How wild is that?
Yeah.
So did your student wind up buying it?
No.
That's wild.
But it's funny how these things come into your life and they leave your life. And there's a book that came out last year called A Perfectly Good Guitar. It's a wonderful book. It's interviews with a lot of different players and their favorite guitars and how they came to have them. And so I recommend that book. There's a lot of great stories in there.
It's called A Perfectly Good Guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. You've been doing this a long time, and it's clear that you're still enthusiastic about it. When you talk about, especially when you talk about playing with others. Mm-hmm. That's when I notice, the collaboration and the playing off of each other seem to really make you happy. Now, I was curious, like what fuels this obsession, or what's the emotional payoff for you?
Oh, I love to play. I just love playing music, and I guess that's a payoff. Is the joy that comes from playing, the emotions that you are able to express, the good fortune of meeting people and getting to have a musical conversation with them when you work with them. The knowledge. I mean, I think I learned something new from every artist and or group that I have worked with, whether it's a musical style, because I've had to learn Cajun music. I recorded and toured with Beausoleil, Western swing. I mean, there's just so much, and you just keep hoping that you keep learning.
What's something that you've learned about yourself along this whole journey?
That's a hard question to answer. I guess one of the things would be certainly a lot more resilient than I thought. Coming from a, I would say this was a rural place to grow up, and all of a sudden you're on airplanes and you're in Europe and you're working with all these different people. And like I mentioned before, I never had any dream of doing this for a living. It just was something that I realized I enjoyed doing, and it just kind of happened over time with playing locally and then, touring regionally and touring nationally. But I think that is one thing that I was a lot more resilient than I thought I was. Yep. And you definitely have to be flexible and resilient in this business.
For sure. If you didn't become a professional musician, what do you think you would have done instead?
Oh, probably working with animals. I actually had wanted to be a veterinarian, as a lot of people when they're young wanted to be a veterinarian, but I really did. And I did not have anywhere near the grades in high school or I would have been accepted at any college for it. But one of my many jobs early on was working in a veterinary office, as an assistant, and doing all the stuff, cleaning cages, and assisting and doing different things, and so definitely wouldn't have been a vet, but probably some work with animals. I think I think there's a very calming, great thing that happens, I think, when to be around animals, and yeah, definitely that.
I agree with you. We have animals. It's a great joy to just hang out with your dog or your cat. It's sort of like very cathartic. It really, it's a great way to just it's like taking a deep breath, but you're petting something furry.
That's very good. That's a good way to put it. Good way to put it. And there's a wonderful sanctuary here that takes in abused and rescued farm animals called the Catskill Animal Sanctuary, and they have called me to, and I can't wait to do this. They have called me to come and play for the animals in the barn in the morning. That's
so cool.
Before they let them out. They have had apparently a couple of other musicians in the wee hours come when everything's quiet to play for the animals, after they're fed and before they're let out into the field. So I think that'll be great.
That's the thing you tape and put on Facebook. What's that?
That's a high pressure gig right there.
Yeah, that's the thing you put on Facebook. That would be wonderful. That would go viral in a heartbeat. Oh my God, that would be because that's such a cool thing to do.
Yeah, they said that they were the animals seemed very soothed by the last musician that was there. And so it's not like you're going to go there and do a whole show. I mean, you just go there and do a couple of songs. But I think that would be nice.
Yeah. Hey, would you shut up? I'm not finished yet, Yelling at the my wife and I often talk about when we're older, we'll be like old people, go volunteer and help cats or something like that, because I can't see we're kind of type A and, want to do something calming at that stage.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Either that or be able to afford to be a beach bum. I would love to live on a beach. Hawaii, you mentioned Hawaii?
Yeah.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great to win the lottery and be a beach bum in Hawaii?
And it's funny? I would live upstate in your area in a heartbeat if it wasn't for that cold weather. I love the people there. It's safe as hell. Everyone's super nice. It's a laid back vibe. I mean,
it's great. I mean, I missed, I was in Austin for 23 years, and I certainly miss winter there because it's not really winter.
Oh, sure.
I don't miss summer there. That's for sure. I was, usually gone, throughout the summer on the road, but to be back here, I've been living back here now for 3 years, and I still don't like winter, but it's the pros and cons. You have to juggle that.
In 2011, I took my older son, who was 21 at that time. We went up to. He met me. I think we flew into the city, and then we drove up to a B&B, someplace like that, up near Woodstock. And I remember it had all these deer. We woke up in the morning. We saw like hundreds of deer outside. It was so cool. The only bad thing is they had like the shower was like one trickle of water and it was ice cold. That was a bit problematic, but
that would be problematic for me. That does not go on here in this house.
It was so cold, but
we see deer. Yeah.
It was beautiful. And we drove around upstate. We went into like, some like local, organic source food. It was cool. Then we went into the city and we saw the Allman Brothers. So that was my best weekend as a parent with him, I think, ever.
That's a good weekend, yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool. And we went to the museum up there, the Woodstock Museum. It was just cool.
Oh, at Bethel, yeah, that's a lovely museum. I've played there. They have a great music venue there too.
I know, because I'm on their list, and they get some great concerts there.
It's wonderful there. Yeah.
Here's the funny thing. So we're up in Bethel with the museum. We're just hanging out, walking around, and I'm taking pictures. And this guy's there with his kid. Yeah, his kid was probably, I don't know, 16, 17, so a little younger than my son at the time. And he's playing guitar, and we start talking. I'm like, oh, where are you from? Tampa, which is where I live.
Yeah.
How weird is that? And I meet a guy in Bethel, New York, who lives around the corner. It was like, oh, that's weird.
That's the small world part, yes.
Tell me something, Cindy, about yourself that people would either be surprised to hear or might find a little odd.
God, I don't know. Does anything surprise anybody these days?
I don't know.
I maybe one of the things which you have experienced firsthand with this Skype setup is that even with all the amplifiers I use, and I have a big pedal board and using a lot of different gear, I am horrible when it comes to technology regarding computers and social media.
You are nowhere near as bad as you think.
It's like, how can you have all this gear, operate all this stuff, and play all these different instruments, all these different tunings, but you're terrible at technology? Well, there you have it.
No, you're not as bad as you think. I'm telling you.
All right.
Trust me. I'm going to ask you 3 more questions.
Okay.
Is there anything that you're still interested in learning how to do? Doesn't necessarily have to be musical, just anything.
Oh, are you hearing crickets yet? Because
no. If you're drawing a blank, that's a fair answer.
I'm drawing a blank. I mean, I like to cook, so I would still love to keep learning how to do more different levels of cooking because I enjoy it when I have time. I would like to learn how to play piano. I think that's a great instrument because it's all there. I mean, I remember my grandmother many, many years ago, I was very young, trying to teach me how to play piano. And, sometimes when your relatives are trying to teach you something, it just doesn't go that well for whatever reason.
Oh, no.
I think she was getting really frustrated because she was also trying to teach me how to read music, which I don't read. And so I would hear the melody and just start playing ahead of reading the sheet music. So yeah, someday I'd like to go back and revisit learning piano. I think that would be really fun and learn how to play Jelly Roll Morton.
Next question. Any regrets?
Sometimes I regret, it's just once in a while, not studying music in the sense of learning how to read music, studying more music theory. I mean, and working with Asleep at the Wheel, and certainly before that, I had to learn music theory, but learning really advanced theory and not only learning how to actually read musical notation, but to do that all the time, because I think that's one of the things that if you don't read all the time, you kind of lose it. I mean, I can read a chart really easily, make a music chart, read a music chart, but actual notation, I think, there have just been a couple of times in my career where it certainly would have come in handy and made life easier.
Yeah, I hear that's not an uncommon answer for a lot of musicians, actually. I hear that quite often. But it's funny, the people I hear it from are the, overachievers that are really, at the top of their game. And I think that's just how life works. The people that are here are always shooting to be, you know what I'm saying? Shooting to be here. I mean, you're one of those 1%, 0.5% technical and performance wise, and you want to go higher. That's the most common people I hear that from, which is what's always interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd just be, certainly not at this point now, do I need to learn how to read music? Probably not, but you just never know.
Sure.
And so I think there's, opportunities that, that certainly presented themselves at one point or another, or still might, where, you got to learn, you got to know how to read music. It certainly doesn't hurt to know.
Sure. Last question, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you. What's been the biggest change in your personality over the last 10 years, and how much of this has been deliberate and how much is just a natural part of aging?
I don't know if anything has really changed in my personality, but I think that I have learned to really pay attention to that inner voice that says, you want to do this and you should do this, and why not? It's not impossible. For example, living in Austin, Texas for 23 years was such a great experience, both personally and musically. I moved there to work with Asleep at the Wheel. I left Asleep at the Wheel. I stayed there and made such great friends and worked with so many wonderful people. But I missed Woodstock as well, and it was a really scary thing to leave Austin, after all that time.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot more music clubs. There's certainly more recording studio work there than here. But I realized it was just time to go, and why not? It wasn't impossible, So I think that's maybe been in the past 10 years is realizing that, if you're scared of something, just try and find a way to do it anyway. And I think I have been doing that most of my professional life anyway. You get a gig, you get a call to do a gig, and you go, oh gosh, I could never do that. They're calling me, am I going to be able to do this gig? Or, these people are calling me to, fill in tomorrow night, and can I learn these 21 songs? I mean, you find answers. You find a way to be able to overcome your fear. And so I think that's kind of been ongoing, but is now more prevalent.
Thank you very much. And I'm really glad you're doing all this stuff. I don't know. I think as you get older, you start realizing, shit, I gotta make decisions that are skewed towards making me happy.
Yeah.
Because that becomes more of a priority.
That too, that too is like, just do work within your limit, within your boundaries, and just, take 5 jobs instead of 10, but do a good job at 5 jobs instead of 10, that too.
Well, let me tell people where to find you. And I just want to talk about a couple of projects that you recently had going on. First of all, I want everybody to check out Cindy's website. It's Cindy Cashdollar, CASHDOLLAR.com. Her first album, CD, I'm dating myself. Her digital download.
People are making
Check out her CD, Slideshow. She's also got a couple of projects going on that I want to talk about. She's playing with Rory Block in the Sisters of Slide. Rory's a fingerstyle blues player, is that correct? And they have a project called the Sisters of Slide. That's going on. Cindy will be performing, and if you're into this, just pay close attention because this thing sells out usually in a day or two. It's something called the Rezo Summit. It's for resonator-type instruments, dobro, steel, anything along those lines, I'm assuming? I don't think there will be steel guitar. It's always just dobro, resonator guitar. So yes, I along with other instructors will probably, I'm 98, probably 98% positive I will be there in November, but along with many other instructors teaching there. Great.
in November at Rezo Summit. Yes.
And that's in November in Nashville, November 2018. Go to Rezo Summit, RESOSUMMITT. I think I have the website right here. I think it's Rezo Summit. Yeah. Rezo Summit, SUMMITT.com. There's a ton of cool instructors there. And if you're into Resonator, it's literally dirt cheap. I just looked at it. I couldn't believe it's like 3 days for $500, which is nuts. She's also doing a clinic in Woodstock with Richard Thompson, and you can find that. It's called Frets and Refrains, FRETSAND, Refrains, REFRAINS. And that's in July in Woodstock, so you can.
Oh, that actually, excuse me, Craig. That'll be 40 minutes west of Woodstock, in Big Indian, which is another gorgeous area of the Catskills at the Full Moon Resort, which is a 100-year-old farm spread, and the accommodations are great. The food is wonderful. I will be presenting a clinic. Richard Thompson will be teaching, along with Happy Traum and quite a few other people.
And for anybody who's not been upstate in July, it is just freaking gorgeous, man. You know, it's nice, cool evenings. It's just, you know, maybe bring a little mosquito spray, but it's it's a beautiful time. It's just upstate New York is absolutely gorgeous. So check it out, and that's at fretsandrefrains.com. Cindy also did She played on 2 recent releases with artists from the Mali region of Africa. One, and I'm going to let her take over this in a minute. One was with the artist called Mamadou Kelly and his band Bankaina. Mamadou, what's that?
Bankanai.
Bankanai. Sorry about that. And the other is Hama Sankari. I'm going to butcher that next one. I need you to take over.
Well, Calling All Africans is the title of the CD. Balebe, Calling All Africans.
Awesome. Balebe, Calling All Africans. And both of these people have worked with like top artists in Mali and all over Africa. The most notable and recognizable to people here in the States would be Ali Farkaturi. And she said, why don't you explain it? They said there was a bit of a language barrier.
Well, there was very little, if no English spoken, but it didn't matter because, you know, once you sit down with people and start playing, and the conversation becomes musical. I mean, it was a little challenging to figure out some things, but their manager was there, and so I'm translating. And there were also other musicians that, you know, we all banded together and did it. But once we all started playing it, it was that was it. Didn't really need to talk about anything.
That's great.
And so both of these CDs, Mamadou Kelly, it's Mamadou Kelly, Kelly. The CD is called Palatiki. And Hama, who's the calabash player, very legendary player, is Hama, and Sankare is Sankare. But both of these CDs are just so, as I said to you before, Craig, it's just like it just puts you in such a good mood. It's such beautiful, joyous music. So it's an honor to be a part of these projects.
Well, and I tell you, I've seen some really great African music, and what always blows my mind, I'll see these guys playing, like somebody will be playing an SG, and he's maybe playing something that's like close to a pentatonic scale, but it sounds nothing remotely like what we'd play. I mean, it sounds wonderful, but it's nothing like those same exact notes are just totally used differently, and it's freaking amazing to watch some of these guys.
Yeah, it is, and their music is it's very much, it's their own version of blues, but it doesn't sound like blues as we know it.
Thank you.
So, at all. And they tour Hama, the calabash player, tours with Mamadou Kelly, and they usually come through the States every year. So I urge people to check them out. It's a great show, and I'm not sure of their schedule this year, but hopefully they'll come through.
Thank you. And I'm glad you got to do those. Thanks for turning people on to that. Any final words of wisdom? And I really appreciate your time. You're wonderful. And
thank you so much for having me. I think he's doing a great job with these podcasts. I listened to a couple. They're fun. They're educational. I think you have a really nice variety of musicians, and it's always really interesting to hear what the other folks in the gang have to say.
Yeah,
you're the ringleader in this circus. You have put together a good.
It's really cool because I'll talk to like Alex Skolnick, who's the lead guitar player from thrash metal band Testament, and he now plays jazz in New York. Then I'll talk with Steve Gibson, who's the head musical director of the Opry, and now I'll talk with you, who's the amazing steel guitar player in another totally different genre. So it's really cool. But the nice thing is everybody speaks the same language musically, and it's just really cool. Like I get a lot out of these, so thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you. You are most welcome, and hopefully you and the family will be back here in sometime in the summer months when it's nice weather.
Oh, I love it. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview as much as I did. Cindy, again, thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And yes, I would just like to thank everyone for listening as well, and to urge people to get out there and support live music anyway, anytime you can. I know it's easy. It's so easy to stay home and watch, but I think it's still more exciting to go out and actually hear live music and support the musicians that are working hard and traveling to bring it to everyone.
I agree with you. It's well said. Thanks again to Cindy Cashdollar for spending time with us. Please check her out online at cindycashdollar.com. That sounds like a buy now.
I know it's a weird name. It's a real name, and I guess the only good thing about it is that people do remember.
But no one's going to forget, that's for sure. Anyway,
right.
Thank you for spending time with us. I really appreciate it. And go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get notified about future episodes, along with some early product announcements and discounts. And remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have some fun. Till next time, peace and love. Thanks for listening. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.